with that. Okay, so welcome to today's Lunch and Learn. And we're glad that you are here. This is an exciting day for us because we're launching this website officially, the new Western Washington Food Systems Partnership website. And so happy that Emily Mankey, who's been helping to build the site and is the kind of administrative whiz at NABC, is going to be giving us part of this tour. And then Cheryl Thornton, who heads up Objective 3 of the Western Washington Food System Partnership, which is about farm to food bank, will be showing us that part of the website and those resources that are there. So looking forward to hearing what they have to say. Now, anytime you have a question, just feel free to either put it in the chat or jump in, raise your hand, or just speak up. It's a small enough group, we can handle your questions at any time, and we do like to have these sessions be interactive. All right, let's you want to go ahead and kick us off, Emily?
Sure. So we're gonna go left to right from on the top menu, and I'm going to do my best to follow along on the screen share. But if folks want to pop open a browser and go to WWFSP.org, they're welcome to follow along on your own as well. I will put the link in the chat. So this is the homepage, Western Washington Food Systems Partnership. Just to give everyone a little background on what this project's all about. NABC received a Regional Food Systems Partnership grant in September 2020. And as part of that grant, there were 4 objectives. The first objective was to create a steering committee, among other things. It's a little bit of an oversimplification, but create a steering committee to strengthen food systems in Western Washington. That is the Western Washington Food Systems Partnership Steering Committee. This is all the counties involved in that work so far, counties we serve, and also counties where we have folks from represented on the committee. We have the committee members represented here, and just as a little more background on the grant itself. So there were 4 objectives. The first, as I explained, was the committee work. And as part of that committee, we created 3 subcommittees. The subcommittees were the governance committee, which kind of oversaw the general structure of the committee. And then there was the context committee, which was tasked with finding a role for the work the committee was doing within the larger context of food systems work happening in Western Washington. The context committee is the committee that came up with the concept of the lunch and learns. So that is one of the things the context committee did. And then the other subcommittee that was part of the Western Washington Food Systems Partnership Committee was the Pilot Project Committee. The Pilot Project Committee was tasked with this portion, which we'll get into later, the Project Accelerator, kind of coming up with a system for creating criteria to select projects, figuring out a concept of how we would provide technical support for the project selected, and all of that good stuff. So that was objective 1, the Project Accelerator, and all of that stuff, the committee. The objective 2 was the Farm to Food Bank objective, which Cheryl will get into more, but that was kind of facilitating more farm to food bank sales, was objective 2 of WWFSP. For folks just getting here, I am just kind of broadly explaining what the Western Washington Food Systems Partnership is, how we were created through a regional food systems partnership grant, and kind of what that the grant was all about. And so objective 2 was the farm to food bank. Objective 1 was the committee. Oh, I'm sorry, objective 3 was the farm to food bank. Objective 2 was actually networking food hubs was part of that one. So I'll get into that later, but that is to kind of create a more robust system of food hubs is objective 2. Objective 3, farm to food bank. And then objective 4 was the Resilerator, which is another kind of adult education for farmers business class that you can learn more about on the NABC website. But for the sake of this project, it's mostly in regards to objectives 1 through 3. So this is, as I said, the map. These are the current members of the steering committee. I see some of you on the call. Hi, David. And that about does it for the general introduction to the Western Washington Food Systems Partnership. And unless anyone has any questions, I'll pass it on to Cheryl. But before I do, I also wanted to let everyone know this is very much a work in progress, a live document. We intend to keep tweaking it and making it better. So please, if anyone has any feedback on just making this more user-friendly, resources you'd like to see, resources that you have that you think should be included, please email me. I just put my email in the chat. And then Cheryl is kind of heading the farm to food bank portion of it. So if you have any farm to food bank specific resources, go ahead and email Cheryl. And I just popped her email in the chat as well. And I see there is a question from Diane about if we're plan to include Kitsap, Jefferson, and Clallam. Right now, we're kind of regrouping with the larger Western Washington Food Systems Partnership Steering Committee. When we begin to focus on recruitment, I think one tactic we might use is to try and find committee members in those areas. And if we had committee members in those areas, I think we would certainly have a better chance of, well, we would be including them in the region. So that's kind of where we're at with that. Definitely seems possible on the horizon. So without further ado, I will hand it to Cheryl Thornton.
Thanks, Emily. Do you want me to manage that, or you want to just do it from your end on the drop downs for me?
I'll do it on my
Okay,
end.
great. Okay. So thanks, everybody. I have been working on an objective of this grant, which is basically how do we help growers increase capacity to be able to provide more fresh product to food banks and food access centers in order to get more fresh product, local product out to clients. So that's kind of the big picture of it. And how do we do that is been a 3-year kind of group process for what's important to be able to provide these resources so that growers have them and food banks have them. So we started out by having a group of collaborators ranging from food banks to Viva Farm to growers to a number of folks to give input on this process of what do we do. So we started out by looking at what can growers use and what can food banks and food access centers use to help facilitate getting more product, meaning what about the grades? What about number ones? What about number twos? How does that work? How can we facilitate getting more product? So we put together a product specifications document that looked at trying to get pictures, descriptions, and so on to be able to have some common language between food banks and food access and growers. So we are we are still doing that. We do have a product specification sheet with pictures, and always trying to get more crops and more available products out there. So we're still working on that component. The second component was, what about resources? What about how do we get information to folks? And this is where this resource kind of toolkit came in. The premise at the beginning of the grant was, let's put together a paper on what food banks can do to help facilitate getting more crops. Well, every food bank's different. Every food access center is different. They're all at different stages of development. So we came upon this as a way to be able to provide resources for 3 different sections: one for food banks and food pantries, one for producers, and then one for food hubs. So everybody put it together in terms of, what do we need to know from each of these perspectives to be able to have access to resources, but have them all in one place, so that you weren't researching something that maybe was relevant, maybe was not. So maybe, Emily, go to the food banks and food pantries again section. So if you are a food bank or a food pantry and you're looking to try to provide more fresh product to your clients, and how do I do that? What does that look like? So we came up with some common overall general categories. So here you'll see, for resources for food banks, if you're a food banks, how do I work in collaboration? What other organizations are out there to be able for me to be able to talk to them and get some information? What about if I want to do any food processing, or what are some of the facility requirements related to that if I am a food bank? And what does that look like? Infrastructure is another one, and we are still working on the infrastructure component of it, because what does infrastructure mean to a food bank or food access? Does that just mean coolers? Does that mean trailers? Does that also mean soft infrastructure, which includes technology? We are putting together a compilation of information from interviews that we've been doing to food banks and food access centers to find out, what does infrastructure mean, and what does that look like, so that we can start compiling that in a way that makes sense. And I think that we'll end up coming up with more resources under this component as we move along this 3rd year. We also have underneath it market and crop planning. What does that look like for any food banks that want to start working with growers, in particular in one-on-one? And we have some packaging standards, which also is helpful. What does that look like when you're working with growers? Are there standards in terms of box sizes, of bunch sizes, of poundage? What does that look like there? Pricing is always a challenge for both growers and food banks and food access to come up with what is the right price? How do I even figure that out? So we put together some resources here from various organizations, from various people, to talk about, oh, this might be an average wholesale pricing guide. That's really helpful. How do I know what I should be paying a grower? How does a grower know what they should be charging? So pricing is a really kind of a very important component of it. Produce handling, food safety. What do I need to know as a food bank in terms of food safety? And we've been able to really gather quite a few resources there. So I think that this will be helpful to food banks and food access. And then I believe as we go down, we've got the product specifications, as I mentioned. earlier, trying to come up with grades and standards. What do purchasing agreements look like between food banks and food access, between them and growers? There's templates here that other food banks use. It's really helpful to be able to have at least a beginning point to understand what does that look like? Is that something that will work for my organization or not? We have purchasing calendars that again helps with some crop planning and potential needs that food banks have throughout a year so that they can start planning. What does that look like? And then some other helpful resources that we've just gathered from other organizations, food pantries. This was not limited to just the region. We did quite a thorough outreach to food banks across the country to see what are they doing. From what I'm gathering, this kind of information and compiling of resources is not available anywhere else. It's just people have to go and hunt and peck on the web, on the internet, and it gets confusing. And we're hoping that this will help facilitate people to find the resources they need without needing to go down a rabbit hole and then realize, oh, this was not what I wanted. And it's just time is important for everybody. So we have the food banks and food access. Emily, you want to go to the food hubs? The food hub section was really vetted quite a bit from food hubs in the region and coming up with what is important to food hubs to know about getting more product from their growers or whatever the organization, however it's structured, to be able to get to food banks and food access. So you'll see similar overall headings like food processing, infrastructure, market planning, packaging standards. That seems to be a little bit more relevant sometimes to food hubs because they are aggregating and distributing product. So if you're having a bunch of growers come and have a 1 pound box of this or four cases of that, and they're all different sizes and shapes, it's hard to build pallets with that. So again, try to come up with some standardization of packaging standards. So if you go down a little bit more, Emily, on this, again, pricing, produce handling, food safety. The food safety may be a little bit different for food hubs than for food banks, but sometimes similar. Product specifications, purchasing agreements. So again, you will see some overlap here, but also you'll see some things that are relevant just to that particular area. So then if you go to producers, they're going to be a little bit different. What does a producer need to know to be able to sell more product to food banks? So this is the producer section. You'll see a little bit again of collaboration, the processing end of it. Can I sell more value added to food banks? What does that look like? What do I need to know? If on my farm I want to do any type of processing, what kind of infrastructure do I need to be able to provide more product? Any type of market and crop planning. How do I do that in collaboration with food banks and food access centers? You can go down a little bit more, Emily. I know I'm going quickly, but people can kind of peruse this. Again, pricing is always the conundrum between food banks and growers. How do I look at what's out there? What's the average wholesale price? What do I need to know? What about cost of production? So we have some resources there. Food safety, food access, and food banks want to know that the produce is being handled in a safe way to get to their organizations. I think, yeah, we do have a lot on food safety, and I think that that's an important component for liability and also for the health of the clients being served. If you want to keep going down, Emily. Product specifications. purchasing agreements is as well for growers so that they understand what do food banks and food access centers, what are they looking for in a purchasing agreement? When does that happen? How does that happen? Which then also relates to the pricing component of it. Calendars is also really important as you go down. Can you have, there's some templates here of, can we help plan for when we're going to get product in so that you're not bunching up, which often happens with food banks. The summer, you have a lot of things available, not so much in the spring and the fall. Can we look at how to coordinate that better? Can then growers look to be growing different things in the shoulder seasons that then provide more fresh product to food banks and food access? So we've really tried to put in a lot of different resources. And I think as Emily said, please, my email is in the chat. Please let me know if you see things in here that you're questioning. I was like, why is that here? Or why don't you have something in here about? Always, please let me know. And it's here to be helpful. It's here to be useful. And we want to make it relevant. So that's kind of the overall, and I know people can go through it on their own and see what works and what doesn't. Please let me know.
Cheryl?
Yes.
That was great. And we have one question that Jennifer asked is, are there plans to include resources for meat producers as well? And that's I'll just say, I think that's a great question, and we can call those out more. There are, as I think Diane here pointed out, there are some in here kind of embedded, but maybe we need a section that's more specific. And I also see Mike Poteet is on this call, and I'm just gonna put in a plug for a future lunch and learn that's going to happen July or August or September. We don't have the date yet, but it will be on livestock production and processing. And right, Mike, there you are. Thanks. So we're going to set that up. So there'll be even more resources once we have that done. But I do appreciate you calling out the need for that to be more obviously highlighted, Jennifer.
The other thing, and I see David's on here too, and David was part of the group that helped a while ago on the product specifications. And I think this is nowhere near complete in terms of culturally relevant foods related to certain food banks and food access. And what do we need to do to make sure that those crops are noted and that they are available to food banks and food access. So David, you have your hand up too. Do you want to pipe in on that?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. I just was calling to say that that's good information. It's a lot of information and
Yeah.
a lot of details. And I was just wondering, as a BIPOC farmer, how we can make this easier for our community members who are non-English speakers, so that we can be able to have more of bullet points, because this is a lot of information and many of our farmers have difficulty even navigating the website. So for those farmers who are not able to do that, my question is, how can we incorporate that part where we can be able to say we can do translation, for example, or we can do some bullet points that can make this information accessible. It's great information, I think, that can be very beneficial. And then on the second part, the issue of knowing the pricing of produce. I know last year our farmers grew and did not know how much to charge for the profits with all this inflation happening. And this probably being the first or second or third time for them to grow and to try and sell crop commercially. We did not know how to price and who to ask. But so that's why I'm saying this would be wonderful information that would say, hey, if you're looking for a place where you want to know the price of a produce, call this number or reach out to these folks. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, David. I think that's good feedback. And I would love to get your read on how to create better access for this from your perspective with the population of farmers that you're working with, that would, I think, help inform us of a number of growers that may not have access. So I would definitely welcome that and hope that I can contact you to get your feedback on that.
No problem.
Great. Well, on the pricing end of it, we did try to come up with, I think on the price sheet that we have there, it is a 2023, those are 2023 numbers on there. And Emily, I don't know whether you can go back to that and on the pricing end of it, come up with where that is. Yeah, this is based upon current 2023. This is organic wholesale. So this is a general guide, the best that I could find right now for what is being paid to growers for organic wholesale for, again, 2023. There's also, the Kitsap Farm to Food Pantry contract farmer price list. So hopefully between a couple of these price lists, growers can begin to look at, oh, this is what the general guideline is. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't talk to the buyer, whoever they are working with, to get that agreement made. It also then, for a producer, goes back to the cost of production and what it costs them to produce the particular product that they're trying to sell. So working in tandem between the cost of production and then also what the current kind of farmer price list is, and then making sure that that relationship is built between themselves and the food bank or food access center to come up with an agreed upon price. And I think that's it for me. Marty?
We had another question come up from
Okay.
Sarah Walls, and she asks, are we at the point where we can share this website publicly with producers, or is this information still being collected? And I'd say yes and yes.
Yeah.
Please share. And as Emily said, it's a work in progress. We will always be updating the website. So it's not a static piece here. So please share and sharing on your website. The link would be fantastic. Yeah. And Diane provided a resource for pricing, and thank you for that, Diane.
Yes, please, more resources, more information. You all are out there doing the work, and so would really appreciate any feedback, any more resources that you have would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, Diane, if you don't mind, I will change the link from a PDF to this.
Yeah, I shared that with Cheryl a lot, like when she talked to me about what we were doing, and we just found it easier since most of our farmers were real timing it. We just put it in a Google Doc and they use that.
No, that's great. I just, for whatever reason, I'd had a PDF, but I will for sure link to that. That's great.
And let me know if there's any issues with sharing on that. It should be fine, but hopefully I'll let people share or let people access it.
I got right in, so it should be fine. It looks like we have.
I just was hoping to go back to David's question about how to make the website easier to navigate for non-English speakers. I would, for these farm to food bank resources, there's quite a bit of text because each entry is annotated. There's a description of each, just a little, you can see here, just a little bit that tells you what it is. The idea being that it might save you some clicks if you know ahead of time what that resource is, a little bit about what it's about. But if that text, I mean, and my question is, does having those descriptions make the site feel less accessible, more daunting, because you have more language there? David, do you have any thoughts about that? Or anybody else have any thoughts about that?
Let me think about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I will kind of reinforce what Marty said, thinking that if someone saw a little sentence about what the resource is, it might help them decide whether to look at it, or it's like, no, that's not what I'm looking for, rather than going into the web, clicking on it, going to that, and then realizing it. So if it's not helpful, then yeah, we need to know that. If it is, we need to know that too. So any feedback would be appreciated.
I wonder, Emily, if this might be, if it might be worth going a little bit out of order and showing the site, the resource library DIGO part of the site, where there is no annotation, there are just lists of references.
Sure.
What do you think about that? I don't want to
No.
disrupt your flow, but it's another example of how to do it.
Fine with this. So this is the Food System Resources Library. Marty did the work of compiling all this. I think a few other collaborators were involved.
Srijana, Shrisa, also, she set this whole thing up in Digo or Dijo, however you pronounce that. And so I was just gathering. She really got this all together here and did the cataloging, figuring out what these tag words were that might help you get to a resource. So this is a different way of organizing information. It's not the same information that's in the Farm to Food Bank. These are more broad food system resources.
Yeah, and I don't know what everyone's seeing, but okay, good. You're seeing the detail. So I clicked on this, and these are, scholarly articles that provide more in-depth information on topics. So kind of more of like an academic. Look at the little Pac-Man there. I think it's just loading. My internet's being slow. But basically each one of these, as Marty described, it's separated by category, and each one of these categories has a list of different articles on each subject. And Dijo sort of does a nice job of compiling and separating by tag, so it's a little more easily accessible. So does anyone have any questions or comments about the resources on this section, the Food System Resources Library? I'm not seeing any more. I personally find the tools for food, I find the little blurb helpful, Marty, but I also see David's point of it being kind of overwhelming for non-English speakers, I think, or people who speak English as a second language. And I think it just kind of occurred to me, not before you said that, David, but probably later in the process than I care to admit, that, wow, we have all these wonderful resources, but none of them are in any language other than English. And I would like to change that and offer some interpretation services for some of these. I don't know exactly what that'll look like, but I definitely, it's been on my mind specifically. And while we're here, I'll just click over to the Lunch and Learn library. All of these, of course, are in English, but I would love to host, I was just talking to Marty about this, I would love to host a Lunch and Learn and have the host and participants speak in whatever, language is native to them, in a non-English, like host a fully non-English one, maybe where they're doing interpretation during, and maybe not, maybe we can subtitle it after, whatever, and do the same for the English speaking ones. Now figure out a way to get some subtitles in there on the videos, figure out a way to translate the documents so that they're available to everyone. So I really appreciate that feedback, David, and it is a long-term goal of mine as well. So while we're here, I will explain, and just in the interest of time, the Lunch and Learn library. So we, as everyone, or as some of you may know, we have been hosting Lunch and Learns more or less every month since 2022. Each Lunch and Learn kind of takes a food systems topic and breaks it down, does like into a digestible, as we're in here now, doing into more of a digestible little lesson. So each one of those Lunch and Learns has its own page now. It has the slide deck from the presentation. And we also created a Q&A document from each that also links to resources that were presented in that Lunch and Learn. And then of course we have the video of the actual Lunch and Learn itself below. So each one of those Lunch and Learns we've presented has its own page here with all of those resources kind of in one handy little place. I'm working to make it a point to make these more searchable, and like I said, I would love to make them more accessible to non-English speakers as well. So that is something I think NABC can do. It might take some time, but I think there's certainly, I know, grants that we have and that we can get that would fund us making these resources more accessible to non-English speakers. I see a couple things. Okay, I've seen some feedback in there with the drop-down feature would be helpful. Okay, that's great. I will, all of these chats will be recorded by Zoom, so I will definitely be looking at these later. Are we able to suggest offer subjects for future Lunch and Learns? Yes, absolutely. One of the questions that I had written down was to ask all of you is what subjects would you like to see us, both for Lunch and Learns and just more broadly, like for resources that you'd like to see included on this. So yes, absolutely. Please suggest some Lunch and Learn, suggest resources. We are open to it all. And then the last thing in the resources library that I will touch on is the Washington State Food System Organization Directory. Marty put this together with the help of the Washington Food Policy Forum. I believe they helped her kind of aggregate some of these resources. So this is just a list of organizations that are doing food systems work. Just so it's kind of all in one place, and obviously there's room to add things and include more, but just to sort of catalog what's being done in the state and where. So that's what we have so far. Again, just like everything else, please include more if you have suggestions. We'd love to hear it. And if nobody has any more questions about the resources library, I will kind of briefly explain these other 3 tabs and then open it up for questions. So the project accelerator, as I explained, this is, if for anyone unfamiliar, this was part of the grant that funded this whole project, which was the Regional Food Systems Partnership Grant. And that was objective 1. Part of the steering committee formation was to create a kind of a pool of folks who could provide technical support to people wanting to create or develop food systems projects. And the way that's managed is much like a grant. We solicit applications, people apply with their ideas, and then we award, instead of funds, we're awarding technical support. So the 2023 Food Systems Project Accelerator awardees are Fair Start, Pierce Conservation District, Farm Incubator Program, San Juan Islands Agricultural Guild, the Lopez Food Center. And for Fair Start, I forgot to mention, it's developing value-added products from food recovery. So kind of keeping food out of waste and turning it into value-added products. So that is the Project Accelerator bunch page, I should say. I don't know why I said bunch. Anyway, so we will, once a new opportunity is announced, you can apply through the website. We have the form. Once it's available, we will make it public again and share links to it. The events page for now is basically just speaking of the recurring events. I think I will, now that we've used Eventbrite, we will embed the calendar in here. Now that I'm comfortable with it and I know that's what we'll be using, it'll be here so you can kind of see what our upcoming lunch and learns are and register straight from the site. So that will be up there soon. And then the final kind of page before I get back to the questions is the Washington Food Hub Network. So this was part of Objective 2, which was to network food hubs and create more of like a robust combined food hub network that could meet demand a little more efficiently. So here, I put this interactive map here. Right now we have the 6 food hubs participating in bi-monthly meetings. We have Puget Sound Food Hub, of course. I don't know why it doesn't want to show San Juan Islands Food Hub's name there. I think it's just the latitude's too close to Puget Sound. And then Whidbey Island Grown, we have Kitsap Fresh, San Juan, Southwest Washington Food Hub, and Link Foods over in Spokane. And the group is, sort of working on solving that big problem of networking hubs and working with the software they all use, which is Local Food Marketplace, kind of bringing them into the fold and figuring out what we need to more effectively purchase from each other, offer more of, allow the smaller hubs to offer more Puget Sound Food Hubs products if they'd like to, and just sort of more effectively meet the demand. So this is just sort of a quick summary of the work we're doing in each hub. And then we also have the collective impact report. This is just the analytics dashboard of all of the sales those 6 participating hubs have done. And it kind of all, you can see how it kind of all ties together, right? We're selling into food access, a lot of food aid coming out of the food hubs, which is, connects over back to the farm to food bank objective as well. So that's basically all of the site. And I will go back to, I see, are we the question? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, one question about the Project Accelerator. Back on
And
that.
are they able to be businesses? And to be honest, I do not remember if it was open to private businesses or whether it was only open to organizations. I want to say that it was, but I think
yes, it's open to businesses.
Yeah, it's just sort of, I think, preferences maybe given to projects that'll help more than one business, if that makes sense, but it is open to businesses.
I want to just pipe in really quickly and say the importance of food hubs, as I've been working with food banks and food access centers, is critical to getting more product from growers to these facilities. And so I think that food hubs play an integral part in that, and was happy that this food systems partnership grant included food hubs because of their importance for distribution. And I think COVID only accelerated the awareness of our food system and the distribution end of things. So I think the more that we can look at food hub resources and make sure that we have that information up and available to people is really an important thing.
Yeah, doing that collective impact report really opened my eyes to that. Like, wow, this is, and the lunch and learn with Trish Toomey, kind of talking about some of the issues with food access in our state was made me realize, wow, food hubs can address a lot of these. Jillian Moore, I see your hands up. Jillian, sorry.
Hi, how's it going?
Good.
So I'm with Cascadia Produce, and we are throwing a big event next week, which really overlaps on a lot of these topics, including a kind of primer session on how to purchase locally. And we have people from small farms, from medium farms, from food hubs, from brokers, from aggregators and warehousers, all talking to kind of a nonprofit and food relief organization crowd about how it is they can proactively purchase locally and what that looks like and what the expectations are and what the payment terms are, and just kind of how to get started. Seems to me like that information really kind of belongs here. And I'm just wondering, in what way can we, I don't know, provide you the materials, or should we try to find a way to record it so that people could watch it? It seems like your audience would benefit from it, but we're sold out. So I can't ask you to market the event from me because we're sold out at 150 right now. But it just, I think it's complimentary.
I would say Cascadia Produce has been also a partner in this, and I really would appreciate any information that you have that you can share with us on that, because it would be helpful. Since Cascadia Produce is not necessarily a food hub as noted here, but I think you play a critical role in distribution. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I think we're a hub. I mean, in that we source from many local farms and take them to wherever they need to go. So I don't know if there's an additional component to call ourselves a hub, but I feel hubbish.
I feel like the only difference the definition of a hub is specifically source identified. So when at the point of purchase, the customer or consumer knows which farm it's coming from, which I do not know if Cascadia Produce does that at all. That's just the USDA definition.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Any farm or any producer has to essentially have that information, right, for food safety. So that's just putting it on the invoice. I don't know why that would be the thing, but
exactly.
Yeah. That's good to know. Thank you very much. But like I said, we weren't planning to record it or do anything live, but just after seeing your or doing anything online, but after seeing all these resources, I'm just thinking, gosh, I don't know if we should recreate it in a lunch and learn style so that it could perhaps be available to people in your network, or if I should endeavor to, get somebody to film it and provide it to you on video. If either of those things are sound right to you.
I feel like making it a lunch and learn, and like just kind of maybe somehow distilling all the resources and knowledge into that format. I think that would be, to me, it feels like the most organic solution. But of course, I'm open to other suggestions as well.
Yeah, and another model that I think is potentially unique that we use in food boxes, we build lots of various culturally relevant food boxes, is we source from small farms to what they can provide. So if a small farm can provide me 1,000 collards, I buy them all at their price, whatever their price is, $4 a bunch. And then I supplement it with either, large farm collards or even national collards, so that the price can be peanut buttered across and be the most available while still serving Washington farms. So to me, that's been a really successful model in being able to drive down the price on small farm product without paying the farmer less than their time and efforts are worth.
That's great. That's a helpful tip for sure. Well, it looks like I do have a couple questions. Let me pull those up. Okay. So the other things we wanted to ask everyone here was, where do you all go for resources? Do you have any kind of resource heavy documents or links you would be willing to share with us that we should have included that aren't included? If so, please, send them to me, send them to Cheryl, Marty. We would love to include them. And the other question that we had for everyone here is, what kind of resources have you been looking for that you either haven't been able to find, or maybe just haven't been able to find as much as you'd like? So yeah, those were just some thoughts that we had about further building this out and making it more robust for everyone. So if anyone has any thoughts on that, please share. Well, I'm not hearing anything. Oh, I see something in the chat. Oh, Diane Fish said things that help our producers are simple pack shed designs. I love that. As a farmer, that makes a lot of sense. And just in general, I think facility designs, that's a really great avenue I could see being put under the infrastructure umbrella. That would be really helpful. Thank you, Diane.
Actually, there is a grant that NABC did that we have that resource. Thank you, Diane, for bringing that up, because that should be on here. And it's something that's already been done, is some best practices for pack shed designs. So we'll get that up right away. It's already been done on at least one resource.
Yeah, and then I see an AFT, American Farmland Trust, for anyone who doesn't know, it has resources on land leasing. Yes. And I don't, obviously that wouldn't belong under the farm to food bank resources, but maybe their resource library, and there might even be, because we did do a lunch and learn on land access with American Farmland Trust. We can head over there and see if the toolkit has any of their lease templates. And I know that I'm not sure if it's American Farmland Trust or maybe it's Washington Farmland Trust. I'm not sure. One of them had a land access toolkit that had a lot of that stuff that I will try and find. Oh, here we have the Land for Good build the lease tool. So we have some of that stuff under the land access umbrella, but yes, 100%. And Maxime and I actually are hosting a land access workshop in Lacey on May 24th. When I follow up with the resources from this lunch and learn, I will include a flyer with a link to register for that as well. It is in person. So I'm not sure how available we will be able to make it digitally, but I think it's going to be the first in hopefully a series. Maybe we'll host another virtual one, and in that case we can kind of break it down like we do the lunch and libraries and lunch and learn for the lunch and learn library, and make it available digitally to everyone as well. Because yes, that is something that comes up over and over again, and without new farmers coming in, we won't have anyone to grow our food. In Western Washington, as we all know, is wildly expensive to buy land. So definitely a food systems issue.
Emily?
Mhm.
I think we should do our final notes here. And one of them is that we would really appreciate you all evaluating the lunch and learn sessions in general. Emily, how do people do an evaluation?
Thank you, Marty. Here we actually have it linked right on the website in the Lunch and Learn library. It is right there. Fill out and evaluate. Oh, of course I've already I've already responded, but here I will copy the link address and put it in the chat. Please, please, please. Thank you for reminding everyone, Marty. Fill these out. It's so helpful for our grant funding to say, oh, I liked that. I didn't like that, whatever. Any feedback is welcome. I put that in the chat. And then of course, as I said, you can also navigate to it from the Lunch and Learn library. If you exit out and forget to copy the link, it's both here, fill out an evaluation, and at the bottom here.
All right.
Evaluation.
And then before we leave this lunch and learn, I'd like to tell everybody about the next one coming up. Keep an eye on your inboxes for news of the next session, which will be June 6th at noon. And Poppy Davis is going to be talking about community development, financial institutions funds, CDFIs for Washington State agriculture. So kind of an agricultural CDFI fund model. And so that should be pretty interesting. And then we'll keep going, planning others. I appreciate any ideas you want to send in for lunch and learns. We will follow up on those.
And Jillian, is your hand still up from before, or did you have a new question before we sign off? I just noticed. Nope, hands down. So I think we're good. We're good to go. I just wanted to make sure. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming and being engaged. We so appreciate all of your feedback and engagement.
Thank you. And we hope to see you at the next one.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Guys.
Emily and Cheryl, for all that good info.
Thank you, Marty, for putting so much of this together. I meant to give you more of a public pat
No,
on the back for it. You did, well, you did a
no
lot.
need for that, for
You
sure.
put a lot of the stuff together. I appreciate. I couldn't have done it without
Take
you.
care,
Here, I'm
everybody.
stop recording.